Think about any of the cultures around the world. You usually imagine these cultures in their cultural garbs or their fashion, which means when world building, you can express a lot about your culture's quirks and ethics, as well as the environment they live in and in what way they traditionally earn their bread with, by creating their cultural clothing, since your culture's fashion is one thing most people will remember. Luckily, for a bit of inspiration, I've put together a set of 3 questions that might help you when creating your culture's special set of clothing, their cultural garbs, or their clothing style in general. Question 1. What was the style of clothing originally designed for? In most cases, certain types of clothing originated as practical clothing for you to work or to hunt, for soldiery, or anything else you'd be more practical in. There are exceptions for this, but the general notion is that you want your clothing you are wearing most of the time to be comfortable, and even better if it fits your expressive needs. This especially applies to the cultural garbs you see of the different cultures around the world. Nearly all of those garbs were originally worker garments. They personalized more and more, befitting their culture's expressive needs, and made more comfortable, of course. We don't even have to get culturally exotic to get probably one of the most worn examples you can think of: the jeans. Originally, jeans were trousers sold to gold diggers in California because it was a sturdy cloth and you could wear it wet or dry without it becoming uncomfortable compared to other fabrics. And I learned that the fabric has its origin in the Genoese Navy, as it was originally used for their sailors for the same reasons. The word jeans is apparently just the etymological descendant of Genoese, which makes sense. Of course, the jean in its design is rather simple compared to other cultural garments, but despite that, or maybe because of that, it's probably one of the most popular pieces of clothing humanity has ever worn. So when you create your own piece of clothing for your culture, think about your culture's work environment and how they deal with hazards they might face day by day. If your culture relies heavily on mining, then there might have been a special garb to protect themselves from the hazards of the job, especially if they are underground and they might even face some enemies like orcs or goblins. Some protective features for even their most comfortable clothing might be a thing. If there are many fairies in the forest your culture lives in who may play pranks on your people, their fashion might heavily rely on wards of protection. They might sew certain trinkets into their clothes, their shirts, their trousers, their skirts. They might wear many protective rings and amulets, or put stuff in their hair so the ghosts don't attack them. Question number 2. What are certain class differences in your culture's clothing, and how does that reflect its design? Once certain garbs became used more commonly, the clothes evolved to suit everyone's more personal needs. What these needs are, or rather, if you can afford them, heavily depend on your social status and wealth. Let's take the suit, for example. Like the jeans, one of the more prime examples of modern fashion. The suit is worn by office workers, by businessmen, executives and politicians. It's in many places a status symbol that is expected. Despite many different men and women wearing the same type of clothing, the suits differ in price and appearance. I might not have the eye for that myself, but there are enough subtle differences between a 100 euro suit and a 10,000 euro suit people might see and judge you for. Going back in time, as the class differences became less intentionally subtle, like in today's day and age, you find way more obvious differences in clothing between the classes. While the poor tried to imitate the fashion of the rich even back then, their goals weren't nearly as achievable as today. I might not see the difference between two types of suits, but I can see the difference between a noble's garb and a citizen's or even a peasant's. When designing for the rich and nobility, try to go the extravagant way. Make it differ from the rubble of your culture. Make the nobility and rich wear colors and cloths that the poor might never even have access to, even if they save money for their entire life. with fantasy, make them wear elusive magic for beautification. Or to get back to the hazard protection, make them wear magical wards the poor might never even be able to afford. But if your society puts emphasis on equality, even if it's just feigned equality, make the style of clothing differ in a more subtle way, like today's suits. Question 3. After you've settled on the class differences, it's time for gender differences. Or in more broader terms, how people with different identities express themselves with the clothing they have at hand. If you've ever been outside, you'd probably know that men and women express themselves differently in most cases. They might be wearing the same type of clothing, like a jeans, some sneakers, and a shirt. But they might have a completely different style while wearing these same items. The jeans might have a different cut, the shirt a different style, and the sneakers statistically different sizes, but well, those are usually not that different in style, at least. The same goes for more expressive things, of course. Gender differences in your society might easily be transcribed by their clothing. At the same time, if the gender roles aren't that clear-cut and laxer in general, you can show this via the way they dress as well. Considering pants are a more masculine thing in our current society, women wear an office dress instead of a complete suit, which is a bummer, considering women look really good in suits. You can emphasize your culture's gender roles and the way people express themselves in your culture by mixing things up a little. It doesn't even need to be that much. But remember that pants were seen once as barbaric. To translate this into your world building, your culture needs certain expectations laid upon your genders, of course. But it can go beyond that. You can think of different clothing for all classes and professions in your society and think about the range of personal expression people might go. Or depending on the role of the individual in society, the range of expression dictated to them by society. So there's actually a bonus question you can ask yourself I've completely forgotten about when writing the script. And that question is, what are cultural differences of other cultures influencing your culture's fashion? Because cross-culture exchange, especially in fashion, is really strong, and it always has been really strong. I don't have to give you many examples of it. I've already given you several examples where this is the case in this video, so I'll cut this short. Besides making your fashion feel a bit more real, it makes your entire culture and entire world feel more connected and way more immersive than if everything would be next to each other without cultural influences. I haven't talked a lot about how to actually design a set of clothing, because I'm not a fashion designer. This video is for you to understand that if you have put thought into your culture, you probably can create several sets of clothing for said cultures. Of course, you can easily get referenced by similar cultures around the world and their fashion. Everyone does this. But that's it for today's video, world builders. I hope you liked it. If so, leave a like and subscribe and comment about your culture's garments. See ya!